Have you ever felt like you needed to get something out of your chest? Like you're gonna go crazy if you don't just scream this out to the world? Well, I have a story to tell. It was meant to be a poem, but then it ended up being 8 pages long back and front. So I ended up having to type it because I can't even understand my own handwriting. So the title of my story is Live Through This. Because if I can live through this, I can live through anything. Okay. All my life I felt like I was born to suffer. I guess that's what made me tougher. I feel like my life has been extreme to the max. But I know everyone has a bad past. I feel like I gotta get this off my chest and forget the rest. You know the common story. I was born into poverty. I always thought God was just mad at me. My mother was a drug addict, any kind known to man, until drugs killed her lifespan. She died in her 30s from cirrhosis of the liver. The thought of how young she died makes me quiver. You know my heart stopped in her stomach when she was giving birth to me. If it wasn't for my grandma praying for me, to be honest, I wouldn't know where I would be. My grandma took me in when I was a newborn. She had to become a mother again with no warning. The same story for my two brothers. The only difference for them, it was 5 years apart. It was always hard to be part of the restart. I remember when I was 6, I moved in with some family. I had an uncle who sexually molested me. When I was 8, I moved out. I was so glad, no doubt. Soon after, my grandmother had a stroke. She was a diabetic who suffered from heart failure, high blood pressure. I took care of her because for her there was no measure. I became an adult at just 8. But I guess that was just my fate. I bathed her, I wiped her, and even gave her her insulin shots. I always felt like my mind and my body needed a jump start of megawatts. When I was 13 or 14, I started smoking weed like my mother. I thought it was my fate, so why bother? I needed an escape from my reality, but I learned about the real world very brutally. When I was 15, my grandmother sent me to school called Job Corps in Greenville, Kentucky. Thank God she did, because for once in my life I felt like I was lucky. They whipped me into shape, and that was no joke. I learned a lot from those country folk. I finished school when I was 18 with a whole life in front of me to redeem. I came back to Miami and I moved back with my grandma. Came back and found that the house was empty. I found life again to be my enemy. Moved in with an aunt in Homestead and learned that the hard facts about life was, and learned what the hard facts of life was all about. I had to get out, lived in the streets for a couple of months. I had to, until another aunt took me in from the dumps. There was a condition though. I had to get a job. I got 2. That was no problem. I had to move out because she lived with a snob. I had a boyfriend at the time that was abusive, so I had cut him off because he was intrusive. I've moved out on my own. That's when I grew a backbone. A little after I met a man I called my husband today. I got married with him a little after my 19th birthday. Soon after, I found out he had a drug problem, and I was reliving my childhood, no doubt. I decided to stay to help him out. Eventually, he came out of the fallout. Eventually. During this time, I got pregnant with my firstborn son. I was so happy. For once, I felt like I had someone. But all that came down tumbling when I was 35 weeks that he was born with spina bifida. Had him that day and became a mom. Surgery after surgery, my son pulled through. but my son was so strong, and that was the truth. 5 months later, I got pregnant again with my second child, a girl. My face cried like rainwater. I felt like it was too soon, but I learned and loved life's new cocoon. She was born well and healthy, but 4 months later she died from SIDS. I guess God took her away because it wasn't time for me. I got in a deep depression, dropped 70 pounds. I cried and I wept. Felt like my life was done. Then I remembered I had a son. I pulled through for him because I still had someone. He continued to go through surgery. A year later, I got pregnant with my third to-be. God gave me the ability to be a mother once again to a baby girl. When she was born, she looked like a white pearl. She was born healthy, and I felt wealthy to have 2 babies by my side. They were all mine. But then 2 years later, my third born was diagnosed with cancer. I needed answers. They called it medulloblastoma cancer in the brain and spine. Now we're here, still strong, fighting 2 years down the line. This is my story for now. I hope that I can inspire somebody to keep fighting, because you never know what life can bring you.